Heritage football coach Wallace Clark joining us now. And coach, you have a player who has made it all the way to the Super Bowl this season. Drake Thomas was a high school football player at Heritage before he went on to NC State, and now, of course, with the
Yes, sir.
Seattle Seahawks. Uh, tell me, what you first when you first saw Drake as a football player, and what did you see from him on the field then?
Well, first time, one of the encounters is more or less him being a ball boy, believe it or not, 7th and 8th grade year, because his older brother was playing, up for us, on the varsity team there. And so just that brief moment with Drake at the time, or just getting to know that he was going to be coming to our school in the future there was something promising for us. But at practice his freshman year, he kind of stood out. You kind of knew that he had something special, just not only the work ethic, but the knowledge of the game. And when he put that on display, you kind of knew he was going to be something special.
When did you realize that he might not just be a special high school player, but he could really go make an impact at the next level or potentially even the NFL?
Well, that's pretty much came once again freshman year. Him spending a lot of time on film, and just getting the feedback from him. You kind of knew he'd game, and I think that's more or less the tradition in their family. His dad is pretty knowledgeable about the game, and his brother Thayer is knowledgeable, and of course Lex. They all kind of know, um, you know, everything about the game itself. So that was a moment. He came in and just kind of watched film, and you kind of tell that the intellect was there, and then your physicality, of course, it was always there. Then everything else started, taking place after that time.
Physicality was definitely always there.
Oh,
That is
yes,
for
sir.
sure. I mean, are you surprised to see him in the Super Bowl?
No, I'll be honest with you. No, it's something that you kind of see. Once again, going back to just from the family aspect. What they instilled in all those young men. From the work ethic off the field, in the classroom, and that type of thing. So you kind of saw something there with all of them. And it's not a surprise that he's there. Just knowing that someone giving him opportunity, that's the main thing nowadays, right? Um,
Yeah.
Putting that type of talent on display. NC State gave him opportunity to put some of his talent and knowledge on display, and then also just being able to make it in the draft. So it's not a surprise on my behalf, and I'm excited for him and his family.
When I'm talking to people about high school football and like recruiting and kids moving up to the next level, I always say like most of the time when you watch those kids in high school, it doesn't matter like their star rankings or anything like that, but you can just kind of tell like there's something different that is about that something different about them, something they have that others don't. Who may be good high school players, but
Yeah.
they're not going to succeed at the next level the way players like Drake have. How Drake obviously had that. I mean, as you mentioned, like the physicality was always there. But when he was on the field, what was your confidence like as the head coach, knowing you had a player like him kind of quarterbacking the defense?
Yeah, the other thing too, he kind of flip flop back and forth on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he
So
did.
also being knowledgeable on the offense side gave him the leg up too, just understanding what take place on that side as a defensive player. As far as my confidence level, far as all those guys that he played with, on the defense side of the ball, they made me a better coach, just understanding how well they move and how well they kind of knew the game, so it made my job a lot easier. And I'm not patting myself on the back for any of this stuff or any of those young men that was on the team at the time, especially him, his accomplishment. It go deeper than that, when some of these young men start out playing the game as youth and how much time they dedicate to it, not only from the physical part of it, but the intellect of it and knowing that part, So once again, I'm not surprised, and confidence he always had it, and he made me have extra confidence, not only in him, but everybody that played around him, on the defense side of the ball.
Anybody that watched him could obviously see his talent and his physical abilities on the field. But what were some of the characteristics or traits that he had that maybe fans or people watching the game couldn't see that you got to see in the locker room or at practice?
Well, just his leadership, once again, not only on the field, but off the field, just remember the many of times that he always approached everything he did with a positive outlook, and there was pretty much no stopping him in that matter, um, and not only with football, but just baseball as well. Watching a kid like that when he was playing baseball, just knowing that him having the self confidence and the drive to be one of the best at everything he does.
When do you think he took the biggest leap in his game? Was that in high school?
From my perspective, we're just kind of seeing his growth. Um, if I would say, freshman year coming in, um, just me in a sense of just getting to know him and seeing how much time he would just dedicate to the sport itself and how much he wanted to grow. And he made that verbally known to me as a freshman year. There was time when his mother would get there early to school and he was like, ask me, Coach, what you doing? And there was times when I'm like, Drake, I'm just get there early and I'm watching film and getting ready for the game plan. He would always come in and just say, what are you doing? What's the scheme for this week? So someone like that, you kind of had an idea to, where he was going to go and where he wanted to be. So going into his freshman year, experiencing that was great. But then as he kind of knew not only the players around him, but what the scheme of the defense was and understanding offense, going into his junior year, it became something special, and I know going to camps and things of that nature. And then when all these coaches start inquiring about him from throughout the cross of the country there, it was, you kind of knew you had something special in this young man.
Yeah, it was obvious watching from, as a member of the media as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
obviously he had a great career at NC State, got drafted in the NFL
yeah,
now. But I always think, when you watch players who get to that level, who get to the NFL, a lot of times they're doing more than just their position. And you mentioned that Drake played both sides of the ball at times for Heritage. There was at least one season where he was a running back a lot. I think he
yes.
almost had 1,000 yards rushing one season. What led to that? How did that happen? And did he embrace that?
Oh yeah, he was all on board. Like I say, he's a great teammate. He was not going to do something that coaches kind of asked him to do. He was all on board. And he just had the mindset and he just loved the game. With a kid like that, you kind of saw that where you put him on both sides of the ball, no matter what, he's always getting after it. And yes, that year was a fun year for us, knowing that he was playing on both sides, but at the same time, the fearfulness of injury, right? When a
Yeah.
kid like that, especially in high school, and then him pouring into his teammates and showing them that he's a team player. He wasn't a selfish type of player. He was on board to do anything to find a victory for Heritage High School.
I mean, it says a lot about players who are willing to do that. I think, on defense, he set the school record for tackles, almost 400 of them. What obviously that's a big number, but what does that number represent about him, and his impact at Heritage?
Once again, I think it goes back to the intellect, putting himself in, knowing his role, right? And being willingness to get to the football at all times. And that those are the special players. You don't deny them from getting to the football no matter where it's located. In his run situation, especially as a linebacker, you play part of the front end of the ball, which is in the box, and also you play outside the box with the pass coverage. And just watching him at NC State and also in the league now with Seattle, he's flying to the ball no matter where it is. So it's one of those things is a beautiful thing to watch players like that. So I think, just him and his career alone, just excelling in that matter. If you're all the way around the ball, you're eventually going to come up with at least a half a tackle, if not.
He when he was in high school, he also had the oh, I think I might have lost you for a second. There you are.
Oh, okay.
Uh, well, when he was in high school, he also had the opportunity to play on a team where you had coaches on your staff who had also been to the NFL. How
Yes.
beneficial was that?
Oh, those guys' knowledge was unbelievable. And the beautiful thing about all those young men, that they came in into our staff, and not only to our staff, but into our school, with the mindset of they're human and they're normal just like everyone else. They didn't keep their status above everyone else, or the knowledge of the game above everyone. They pretty much coach like every other high school / coach that's out there. They weren't trying to boast about where they've been, which was a beautiful thing. And I think once our players, the excitement about those guys being there and being part of our program, was exciting. But at the same time, they were just like me and you, Nick. It was beautiful to see those guys coming in with that mentality and say, look, we're here for the kids. Let's coach the kids up and have fun doing it.
Was there anything notable that you had to like coach out of Drake or correct from him in high school?
Look,
That means yes, because you're laughing.
yeah, look, kind of putting himself in harm's way at time. So when I say that, we actually, I forget what team it was, but we had this team on their own 5-yard line or 3-yard line or something like that, and he wanted to jump over the pile, and pretty much to make a tackle. And I was just like, hey, Drake, and you could just see him approaching to the line of scrimmage, and he's going to do it. So needless to say, he did it and was successful at it. But at the same time, I was like, hey, look, you're putting yourself in harm's way about doing things like that, especially in high school, But, jokingly to say that, it kind of got him, and he let some of his teammates know too, going back to what I was saying. Nobody was going to deny that young man from getting to the football.
Is there a moment or a play or anything that you think back of or think back to when he was at Heritage and you like that was Drake Thomas?
Yes. As I think back, one moment that I'm going to hold on to for a while here, and if it kind of leaves my memory, shame on me. But we was playing Pine Forest, and we had, we was doing well that year, and we had a long run into the playoffs, and we had to travel down to Pine Forest. And of course, you mentioned those guys, Coach Washington, Coach Holt, Coach Johnson, and Coach Parker. They always told those guys and our staff too, trust the process, trust the process. That was pretty much the theme of going into that week. So needless to say, just kind of moving forward here, we was going into almost about to be in overtime, if I'm not mistaken, and had an opportunity. I called a timeout. The guys came on to the sideline. And I'm panicked, I'm seriously panicked. And I look at Drake, and he was like, Coach, we got this. And I'm kind of losing my mind. It's like, just giving instruction, barking instruction, like, no, you got to do this. He was like, Coach, wait. Trust the process. We got this. And I was like, can't play football then. So at that moment, you kind of knew that special moment about him. He rallied the guys together, and they went out and played defense well. And we came away with the win. We had to come back home, if I'm not mistaken, and go against our rivalry. That year.
Yeah. Based on everything you've said about his leadership and everything, that doesn't surprise me at all. What yeah, you mentioned his family and their ties to football. Obviously, Thayer was his older brother, or is his older brother. Went on to play at NC State, and that's where Drake turned up to, and their younger brother Lex also went to NC State. I think he's in the transfer portal now. But Thayer being at NC State, did that make it a done deal that was where Drake was going?
Well, I never knew what the decision was, and that's something I say to all these young men. Their family is their decision makers, right? It's not me. I just want them to be able to grow in their sport, and take each day seriously, in the sense of just saying their choice and their family choices is their choice. There was no influence by myself or anyone else on staff, for that matter, to know that their parents do a great job of leading them and guiding them in the right direction. And I know that's going to continue to happen. So with that, it was more or less him talking to his family, the family getting together and deciding on whether he wants to be at NC State. Not so much because of Drake, just more or less their family decision, and left everything up to him.
When you were talking to the college coaches during that recruiting process, what were those conversations like with them about Drake? Did you have to convince them about anything translating to the next level, or were they already convinced?
Look, majority of those guys that called in, there and it came, stopped by and that type of thing, they was already convinced. He already put a lot of those things on display, his talent, and once again, when these guys go on the recruiting trips and things like that, some of the coaches get to quiz them in the sense of just saying what type of knowledge do they have. And I think coming away from some of those visits and things like that, they already knew what type of player, young man, and also just looking at the family history too. His dad played in college, and once again, they pretty intelligent when it comes to football and knowing the game. So I don't think there was no surprise on their behalf, what they was getting.
How have you seen his game improve or evolve from high school to NC State and now to the NFL?
Well, I've never been. I've been to a few of the spring practice over there. Just some of the coaches always invite high school coaches to come out and see and just get a look and see, what they're doing and see how that could kind of be of some resource / help for us as high school coaches. I went to a couple of the practice over there and just kind of seen, him moving around and then seeing how he fits into just only the practice aspect. Once again, there's no surprise when I got there to see flying around, knowing what he was doing, and being positive, and once again, that leadership role, so, and it kind of reflects now, as I'm not in all the Seattle team meetings and stuff like that, but you kind of tell, he's in the right place the majority of the time, making the right decisions, and being that I wanted, being that he's there and having an opportunity to start, they saw something in him and knowing that somewhere along the way the leadership role took place.
It'd be interesting to be in some of those Seattle meetings.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How obviously Drake's been gone from Heritage now for a while. How has he and Thayer also stayed connected to the program? I think I saw they were hosting a youth camp out at Heritage last summer, right?
Yeah, I think they come over and do a few things over there for the young kids in the community. That goes back to, just a family in general, right? And just like I say, the leadership role. And I think that starts from mom to dad. I know dad may not might want me to say that, but his mother, like I say, she makes sure that they do all the right things off the field and support them from the athletic aspects of stuff. And dad is always the same thing, and let those guys make their decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've been around, coming back into the community, and the young kids kind of know them, and that's always a good thing. Even from our program,
Yeah.
they're not so far removed that some of these guys like, what, they're old, that type of mentality. But at the same time, it's been a beautiful thing to know that they're coming back and contributing.
What impact does it have on players, whether they're at Heritage or just, in the area, even maybe at even other schools, to be able to look and see, hey, here's a kid who went to one of our schools here in Wake County, and now he's playing at the biggest level you can possibly play at in the sport of football.
Yes, and you really think back about it, Nick, and you, like I say, you've been part of this for a while in the Wake County, and you kind of seen some of these young men, not only Drake there and some of the other guys, the Barrios, young man from Leesville, you think about Dexter Lawrence and Bryce Love. So a lot of those guys from this area, just in general, made an impact, not only in the community and the high school that they played at, but going on for the collegiate level, making an impact and an impression, and just kind of keeping some of the youthful minds to know that, if you work hard at it and you dedicate your time and keep yourself moving in the right direction, yes, one day it could be them. And you talk about the percentage of who's making it and who's not, right?
Yeah.
And there's always that opportunity to know that, there is a chance, right? Not everybody get to make it at the level he's at, especially playing in the Super Bowl.
That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about this until just now when you said that. When Heritage opened, and for people who aren't as familiar with Wake County, Heritage is in Wake Forest. When Heritage opened, it basically split Wake Forest, what was Wake Forest Rollsville, in half, right? A lot of the students who were at Wake Forest Rollsville went to Heritage. At the time, that's when Wake Forest was really getting its run that it had in football going.
Yes.
So Heritage is still, relatively speaking, Heritage is still a young athletic department, young football program, compared to a school that's been around as long as Wake Forest has. What does it mean to a program that's still relatively new to be able to look and say, hey, we have an NFL player and we might have a Super Bowl champion?
Yeah, that's very true. Once again, it goes back to the families. I'll kind of predict and not really predict to say, when Heritage first opened, it was primarily Wake Forest Roosevelt High School at the time for us a name, and also Wakefield.
Yep.
And then you take a look now is Wakefield, Roseville, Heritage, and Wake Forest. We're the pretty much north part of Raleigh. There, we're the main schools in the area, and then just the growth in the area too. So it's not really so much of the Heritage High School itself. It's more or less the families that come and are part of this community. Not part of Raleigh here, which is that alone says a lot about itself. As the families that comes in, that's the main thing I see for some of the growth slash success that Heritage High School have had thus far.
There's been a lot of success in that area, both at the team level
Yeah.
and at the player level. I mean, you could throw Wake Forest, Rolesville, Millbrook have all been to state championship games recently in football, and
Yeah, look,
there's
look, you put it that way, kind of make me feel some type of way in a sense. Uh,
well,
hey, look,
you're the one with a player in the Super Bowl this
well,
year.
look, look. I'm not even gonna dwell on that part. But just knowing too, you mentioned some Wake Forest being there 3 times. Millbrook just had the opportunity to be there, and then of course Roseville. And we're scratching our back saying, "Oh, we're next," type of thing. No, it's all in good competition around here too, and I embrace it.
Yep.
And the most important thing, like I said to you earlier about even Drake, it's just more or less how these young men families pour into them, and everybody's chased that dream and want that opportunity, but at the same time, on and off the field, it's important for these young men to know too. There's a chance, no matter what you do in your profession.
Absolutely. All right, last question for you, Coach, and this will be the hardest one of the day. What's your prediction for the Super Bowl?
Well, look, I'm gonna say I'm going to answer your question, but jokingly, the commander's supposed to be there because that's.
I'm a Panthers fan, so
Oh, okay, so there you go. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of this. Once again, you mentioned Drake May, from North Carolina, University of Chapel Hill there, and then also knowing that, Drake and some of those guys too. I think it's going to be a good one. And, needless to say, of course, Seattle plays defense extremely well. I'm going to say that right now. Not just for the sake of Drake Thomas there, but a lot of those other guys fly around well. So they're doing some great things on defense. And needless to say, I'm somewhat of a bias with defensive plays anyway. So Seattle get the win.
maybe it'll be the new Legion of Boom in Seattle. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
All right, Coach Wallace Clark from Heritage. We appreciate you jumping on, talking to us about Drake Thomas, and I'm sure you'll enjoy watching the Super Bowl.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'll be in the comfort of my home and enjoying every moment of it.
That's what I'll be doing as well. All right,
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
it, Coach.
All right. Thank you. Go Huskies.